The main evening news now on BBC One with Nicholas Witchell.
26 people have been murdered by a terrorist car bomb in Omagh, County Tyrone. It is the worst single atrocity in 30 years of violence in Northern Ireland. Good evening. 26 people have died, adults and children, Protestants and Catholics. Scores more have been injured. Some are in a critical condition, fighting for their lives. They were all in Omagh in County Tyrone this afternoon. It was Carnival Day, more relaxed than usual, because Northern Ireland had hoped that terrorist violence was a thing of the past. At 2:30, police in Omagh received a warning that a bomb had been planted outside the town's courthouse. The courthouse is at the top of the high street. Police moved hundreds of people away to the other end of the town centre. At 3:10, the bomb went off where the majority of them were standing. No group has yet said it planted the bomb, but it is believed to have been the work of a dissident Republican group opposed to the peace process. Our correspondent Chris West is in Omagh.
The explosion at 3:10 in the afternoon ripped out the heart of a busy town packed with shoppers and with people simply enjoying the final day of Omagh's annual Carnival Week. The terrorists gave a warning. They said the bomb had been placed in a car outside the courthouse at the far end of the main street. Police were given some 40 minutes to clear the area. They shepherded hundreds of people to the far end of the main street, and that was where the bomb went off. People who thought they'd reached safety took the full impact of the blast. Many of the victims were women and children. They'd been out shopping at the sales. In just one moment, a busy shopping street on a Saturday afternoon was transformed into a scene of carnage and mayhem. Without doubt, the single worst atrocity in even Northern Ireland's bloody modern history. The scores of injured, many of them horribly mutilated, overwhelmed the local hospital. By the only stroke of fortune on this otherwise blackest of days, it is a major accident centre less than a mile from the scene of the blast.
I just had to try to tell the lady that the ambulance was coming. She was screaming and help me, and I mean there's people everywhere just help me and blood. I mean there's nothing I could do, you know. I could just say the ambulance is coming for you now.
Appeals went out on local radio for off-duty doctors and nurses to return to work to help cope with the seemingly never-ending stream of victims. Some of those who did not die in the town centre were beyond help when they arrived in hospital. They died while they were being treated. Priests gave the last rites to the dying and attempted to give comfort to their families. As word of the atrocities spread, families came to the hospital for news of the victims. Scores were injured. The police commandeered a bus to take the walking wounded for treatment. They filled the vehicle twice over.
So we commandeered the buses, and the drivers very kindly helped us. Everybody put their hand to the wheel, as one would say, and as many people as was able to walk, we put them into the Ulster buses and ferried them to the County Hospital Casualty Department to alleviate some of the problems for the ambulance people who would have to deal with worse casualties.
They're big, brave men today, but they're going to that hospital and see all the wee youngsters dying. Dying they are. And this is what the peace process is about. Forget it. Forget it. Hanging's too good for them people who did that today. Too good for them.
Other hospitals in the region pitched in with help. Their task was hampered by major problems with communications. The bomb had knocked out telephone lines. As rescuers sifted through the debris in the centre of town, it seems the intention was to try to wreck the hopes of peace which arose from the Good Friday political agreement. Certainly many of the people of Omagh who voted yes are wondering tonight whether their faith in the new process was justified. Chris West, BBC News, Omagh.
The Chief Constable of the RUC, Ronnie Flanagan, visited the scene of the explosion this evening and described it as bloody murder. He said the people responsible were driven by bloodlust.
These are people who have murdered here today because they want to murder. An attack upon innocent, decent people on a Saturday afternoon. Men, women and children, Catholic, Protestant, totally indiscriminate bloody murder.
You believe this was definitely the terrorists' intention?
I have no doubt whatever that that was their intention. They gave us a grossly inaccurate warning while our officers were striving to clear the area to which the warning related. The courthouse, a bomb detonated 400 yards away from the courthouse. I have no doubt these are people who murdered because they want to murder. These aren't people who are reluctantly engaged in some campaign of violence. These are murderers who do it because they've nothing else to offer. I've seen things like this before. Nobody should ever have to witness things like this. But this is the worst that I've seen of all similar atrocities.
In a statement from Buckingham Palace, the Queen has spoken of her shock at what she called this appalling crime. The Prime Minister, on holiday in France, has talked of an appalling act of savagery and evil by people determined to wreck the prospects for peace. The Irish Prime Minister, Bertie Ahern, said it was an attack on democracy. And the Sinn Féin President, Gerry Adams, said tonight that he was horrified. He said he condemned the attack without any equivocation whatsoever.
The Good Friday Agreement brought real hope to Northern Ireland, though the peace process has remained precariously balanced. The standoff at Drumcree during the marching season raised serious concerns. The total despair caused by today's events, though, eclipses all of that. Politicians across the parties were united in their condemnation. The Prime Minister, who's on holiday in France, vowed to do everything to ensure the bombers were brought to justice.
I can barely express the sense of grief I feel for the victims of this appalling, evil act of savagery. These lives that are now lost so senselessly, so much innocent blood shed. Our other emotion has got to be not simply one of outrage at the evil of it and total determination to bring the perpetrators of it to justice, but an equal determination that these people will not win, that they will not destroy the process that we have built up.
Of course, my heart goes out to all those that are killed and to those who are injured and to their families. This is a tragic day and a very serious bombing offence in terms of anything that's happened over recent years. And the fact that for whatever reason the bomb went off in an area where people thought they were safe in makes it even more devastating.
As Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister surveyed the scenes of devastation, he said the bombers' actions were totally against the wishes of the vast majority of people.
I called at the police station to get an update. I saw grown men standing crying. I saw men in their uniforms covered with blood, and they were the people who witnessed what happened here. The people of Omagh have had a terrible price to pay for the sheer atavism and barbarity of the people who carried this out.
Sinn Féin's President Gerry Adams said he was horrified by the attack and he condemned it without equivocation. Unionists, though, immediately blamed dissident Republicans for the attack.
It's very difficult not, after all these years, 28 years and so many deaths, not to be a little bit cynical and to remember that we've had the condemnations before, perhaps not from Gerry Adams, but we've had condemnations before.
But is that not the significance?
We've had resolutions of sympathy, and people tend to forget unless they've been touched by the violence, as so many of us have been over the past 28 years.
With the Northern Ireland Assembly due to meet again at Stormont next month, the government's insistent that the peace process won't be derailed by today's events. The key concern now is for other paramilitary groups not to respond with retaliatory action. The implications of that are difficult to gauge. Carolyn Quinn, BBC News.
Joining us now live from Omagh is the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, Seamus Mallon. Mr. Mallon, as we saw in that film there, you've been in the town for some hours. What, I wonder, are your thoughts tonight about what you've witnessed there?
Well, I think my emotions, first of all. Two things will stick in my memory. One is the sight of a child's pram sitting in the middle of the rubble, surrounded by the most awful destruction you have ever seen. And the thought in my mind was, where was the child? Where was the mother? And shortly after that, I met a lady on the street, totally distraught. She was looking for her daughter. They had been together in the town earlier today. She hasn't seen her daughter since. And when you look at that and see that, and realize the number of deaths there have been and the number of people who have been very seriously injured, then I think you realise the enormity of this attack. My thoughts are very simple. My thoughts are absolutely simple in relation to this. The political process has got to create a new future for all of us. We have had a beginning of that. We've had a referendum, we've had an election, we have set up the assembly, and we are not going to allow that new process to be derailed by anyone, least of all the cowardly people, the murderous people who took people's lives in this way for their own reasons, whatever those reasons may be. We will not let them do that.
Is it your belief that this was the work of a dissident Republican group?
I have no doubt whatsoever that that's the case. I have no doubt that their objective was to actually retard the political process, to ensure that the new dispensation won't work, and to try and prevent the hope that is in the community becoming a reality. Again, I repeat to them, they will not succeed because the community, and I speak on behalf of the community, simply will not let them derail this process.
But in pure security terms, Mr. Mallon, what can be done about these dissident Republican groups?
Well, I know that both the police in Northern Ireland and the Garda Síochána in the Republic of Ireland are working in a very intensive way on this problem. I have no doubt whatsoever that they know the personnel. I have no doubt whatsoever that they have very good intelligence, and I have no doubt whatsoever that they'll catch these people, because these people have committed an act of atrocity against the entire community. Every single person in the north of Ireland has been attacked by this bomb attack, and the community themselves will ensure that those people are not allowed to remain part of a civilized society. They will be caught, they will pay for their crimes, they will not be allowed to get away with this.
Seamus Mallon in Omagh, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the RUC has set up an emergency telephone line for the families and friends of people who may have been in Omagh. The telephone number is 01232 673371. I'll just repeat that number, 01232 673371. And now just briefly the rest of today's news. The Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott says he's reopening the inquiry into the sinking of the trawler Gaul, which went down off the coast of Norway 24 years ago. Mr. Prescott said the decision had been taken in the light of new and important evidence obtained during a survey of the wreck. Despite a public inquiry which blamed bad weather for the tragedy, rumours have persisted that the ship was sunk during a spying operation on the Soviet Navy. There have been more funerals today in the Kenyan capital Nairobi for victims of the bombing of the American embassy there. At least 240 people were killed in the attack and thousands were injured. The United Nations Security Council has called on all states to cooperate to avoid such terrorist acts in future. Police in North Wales have widened their search for the retired police inspector Gwilym Evans and his 13-month-old grandson Liam. They've been missing since Thursday evening and were last seen at a garage in Colwyn Bay. Farmers and caravan site owners have been asked to look for anything that may help discover their whereabouts. Now let's return to Omagh, to the scene of today's devastating bomb attack. Our Ireland correspondent Mark Devonport is there. Mark, I know that this evening you've been to the hospital where many of the injured are being treated. Can you just give us a sense of what is happening at that hospital?
Well, the hospital is full of people really besieging the authorities to see what is the state of their loved ones, whether their relatives and friends who were perhaps in the centre of Omagh here this afternoon are actually being treated. One man came up to me and asked me what was the latest statistics in terms of fatalities, and I told him that the latest figure I had was 26 dead, and then he said, "I'm looking for my wee girl." He's one of many people who are looking still to try and find their loved ones. There's no great shows of emotion there. I think there's almost a numbness. It hasn't really quite settled in with the people. Not only the people who've lost loved ones and are looking for their relatives are there, there's also the emergency services who are standing around really not believing what they saw for their very own eyes this afternoon.
Seamus Mallon said that he had no doubt that this was the work of a dissident Republican group. Who would be the prime suspects, Mark?
I think the prime suspect will be a group which terms itself the real IRA. This is a group which is loyal to the former Quartermaster General of the Provisional IRA. They've got up to 90 members, and they have been responsible for a series of bombings in market towns in Northern Ireland over the last few months. There are a couple of other factions on the Republican side who are still engaged in violence, the Continuity IRA and the INLA, so it could be those groups, but the real IRA will undoubtedly top the list of suspects. Their previous bombings have caused widespread damage, but nothing like this.
Gerry Adams has said that he condemns this attack without, he said, any equivocation whatsoever. The question must be asked, will the mainstream Republican movement, if you like, do something to prevent these dissident groups continuing this sort of thing?
Well, I think the mainstream Republican movement is in a catch-22 sort of a situation. Obviously, the dissident Republicans seem to be moving in a direction which is against the mainstream Republicans' strategy. In the past, we've seen feuds between Republican groups, but if they engaged in that kind of activity, they would be in breach of their own ceasefire. So I think the kind of pressure which has been upon them from other politicians has not been to crack down physically, but to make clear their condemnation, and if Gerry Adams has made that clear tonight, there will be a welcome from some other politicians for that, but also to do more in terms of proving their bona fides in relation to peace, in relation to the decommissioning of paramilitary weapons, and in relation really to saying that the IRA, the Provisional IRA's war is now over.
The purpose of the bombers, of course, Mark, in carrying out this attack and producing the sort of scenes that we've been witnessing this evening, is to destabilize the whole peace process. How great a danger is there that scenes such as we're looking at now will have that effect on the peace process?
Well, those scenes that I think you're looking at of amateur footage taken shortly after the blast will have a very shocking impact on the wider community here, but especially, I would say, on the unionist side of the divide. We know that politically there have been those unionists who have been, for a long time now, unconvinced about this peace process. They've argued that it's a flawed process, and they will be bolstered in those arguments. And we'll also be looking, I think, with some trepidation towards the loyalist paramilitaries. Some loyalists had said that if Republican bombings of the kind we've seen in the last few weeks continued and caused fatalities, that could put unbearable strain on the loyalist ceasefire. So tonight, people will be hoping that that isn't the case, that there isn't any kind of a tit-for-tat action. But I think this is really a very worrying time for the peace process overall. It was coming up at any case to a difficult time in September when we might see Sinn Féin in a future devolved Northern Ireland government alongside unionists. This bombing has been designed and has indeed made things extremely difficult.
Mark Devonport in Omagh, thank you very much indeed. And so just finally to recap on the main news tonight. 26 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in a terrorist bomb attack in Omagh in County Tyrone. A dissident Republican group is believed to have been responsible. It is the single worst act of terrorism in Northern Ireland's 30 years of violence. From BBC News, good night.